they're the only ones that have a chance of either forming government or going into the opposition. So a lot of new members are being brought into the Pangu camp. The Pangu camp has put pictures on social media showing their presence as soon as the declarations are made. The PNC has been relatively quiet. They've said things, and Peter O'Neill has come out and said things on the media, but they've been relatively quiet compared to what Pangu has done so far.
Community celebrations for Epitoma o Te Reo Maori Kukiairan o Kokalin's Language Week are in full swing in Aotearoa. Events have been taking place across the country, igniting a love of language in the next generation. And Pacific reporter Lydia Lewis has been speaking with community members across many different generations.
Pametua Cook Island elders are being celebrated for their invaluable knowledge.
My name is Ake Mitchell. I'm originally from Rarotonga, Titikaveka, born and raised in the Cook Islands. I've been migrated to New Zealand with my family. What they have passed, there is no knowledge.
He's young. Is a blessing for our family and our community.
Mrs. Bua says language and art, including Te Baibai, are entwined in her vibrant and colourful culture, passed down from her mum.
For me, watching my mum, she didn't want to have a restaurant birthday. She wanted to come and continue to show her skills, her expertise with our mapu, our young youth, and why it's important because her mother taught her.
This week, Akimitsu celebrated 73 years her way by teaching the art of Te Baibai making.
I just love doing that. Anything now, I just love to do pillow slip, embroidery, or whatever. I just love doing it. It's an ongoing thing.
And Chelsea are on the verge of signing the Brighton defender Mark Cucurella for a reported fee of just over $60 million.
That was Paul Serra. Let's stay with sports news because an English football team has backtracked on a plan to rename part of its stadium after fans pointed out an unfortunate words. Iona Hampson reports.
The renaming of sports stands and stadiums as part of sponsorship deals is nothing new. But when Southend United shared news about a partnership deal with a local estate agent, fans suffered an issue. They unintentionally renamed the club's West Stand the Gilbert and Road West Stand, the name of one of Britain's most Victorian serial killers. Road West. Murdered at least 12 young women and girls in the 70s and 1980s. But Miss West, who is 68, was served a life sentence after being convicted in 1985. After the error was spotted, the National League Club said they would discuss.
你总是忙于照顾这个家，辛苦了。你以后记得每天吃一碗，好好保养自己。把燕之屋软垫送给他，用一碗好燕窝滋润身边的他，滋润我们的爱情。
大家好，我是赵丽颖。吃燕窝，我只选燕之屋。
燕之屋24年推出高品质燕窝，全国门店好600家。燕之屋专线
4771649来看看。贵站提醒您，投资有风险，注视机。
许中方为捍卫国家主权和领土完整采取的一切必要措施。总台记者综合报道。
联合国秘书长古特雷斯3号回答记者有关近期美国众议院议长佩洛西窜访台湾议题重申，和联合国大会通过的
big problem. But most of us find it a bit unpleasant and need to figure out how can we actually make the experience better so that we won't be lazy. In fact, that is one of the key ways to avoid laziness is literally the same thing, but the framing matters immensely because if you're thinking about pushing yourself and then you're giving yourself these get out of jail free cards, you're very unlikely actually to slack. You're most likely to actually hit 7 days a week or maybe 6. Whereas if you give yourself a 1-year goal, once you've hit it, you'll stop. So I think it's really interesting, generally, a mindset of how do we have a little bit of a fallback plan, but push for the best and anticipate a little bit of bumps and get yourself out of jail when that happens, instead of what the hell.
It's like sometimes it's as if we are habit machines, but you have found out ways to hack the machine. That's what's so impressive about your work, Katie. Like the temptation bundle. Tell us about that.
Yeah, temptation bundling is one of my favorite hacks for making habit formation easier. And we talked a little bit earlier about present bias and how do we make it more fun to pursue our goals. So one way that I've studied of overcoming the barrier that is often unpleasant to pursue our goals is by encouraging people to link an activity that feels like a chore with something that is a guilty pleasure, so that actually both things will be transformed. So to be really concrete about this, imagine you only let yourself watch your favorite lowbrow TV show while you are working out at the gym. Now all of a sudden you're going to start craving trips to the gym to find out what happens to your favorite characters. You won't feel guilty watching the show while you're there because you're being productive, you're not wasting time at home on it. And time is really going to fly while you're exercising. So it's this sort of magical combination. You can do this in lots of places in life where you have some chore that you're dreading, you can temptation bundle with it. So imagine only letting yourself pick up a tempting treat you might get from a coffee shop when you're on the way to the library to hit the books. That's something I often talk to my students about as a useful temptation bundle. You can only listen to your favorite podcasts or radio shows while you're doing household chores or cooking a fresh meal for your family. There's all sorts of different ways we can do this. You can only go to a tempting, indulgent restaurant while spending time with a difficult relative who you should see more of. You know, whatever that chore is, there's a temptation you can bundle with it.
I recently spoke to a doctor who tried to quit sugar and he found it so hard, unbelievably hard. And he tried all sorts of things and eventually used an app. Part of the app was he had to send a photo of everything he ate to his nutritionist. It sort of held him accountable. And is that an example of a commitment device? Because I love this idea that you introduced to us, commitment devices.
Yeah, it's a great example of a commitment device. So a commitment device is sort of the flip side of the temptation bundling solution for present bias. So you don't find it super fun to pursue your goals, you put it off. One way we can solve that is let's just change the equation. Let's make it more fun. We can temptation bundle, and we have lots of experiments showing that that's useful. But another strategy that's been empirically proven really effective is actually basically set steep penalties or constraints for yourself if you fail to achieve your goal. So just like we're used to being fined for speeding by the government, right? We can actually fine ourselves or punish ourselves if we don't achieve our goals. We can act as our own incentive creators. And so we can do that by making ourselves accountable to someone. We have to send photographs into someone. We decide we're going to do that. A nutritionist, say, who will hold us accountable, and then we feel the shame if we fail. You can also literally put money on the line. And there are websites that will help you do this. I'm not employed by any of them, so I'll just name a couple. Sick.com, bminder.com, there's probably many more out there. You can put money on the line that you agree to forfeit if you fail to achieve a goal, and choose a referee. It can even be a device that will hold you accountable. And you can send that money to a charity you hate if you want to really make it sting. And there's research showing this helps. So people quit smoking at a 30% higher rate, for instance, when they're randomly assigned to have a way to put money on the line that they'll have to forfeit if they fail to pass a nicotine or cotinine urine test 6 months later. really big benefits.
Yeah, this will be way too much for some people, but was it your work I was reading that someone had pledged to donate to a white supremacist organisation if they didn't quit smoking?
I am not responsible for that particular study, but that is the kind of thing that people can try. Now, you may find that distasteful because you might actually have to then follow through and donate to that organization. So I think you have to pick your poison carefully because it could come to pass. It's both more motivating if you choose something that's horrible, but also you might have to live with that consequence.
Is there such a thing as trying too hard to change?
That's a great question. Probably, yeah, because I do think at some point if you are putting all of yourself into some effort to change and you're hitting a wall, you probably need to step back and ask, am I approaching this the right way? If it's so hard, if I'm having so little success.
Yeah, and in fact, you identify rigidity as a problem when it comes to change, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So one really interesting study that my collaborators and I conducted was looking at whether or not there are optimal ways to help people form habits. And we compared two strategies that we thought could have different benefits. One was trying to get people to be really consistent in the times when they engaged in a behavior they were hoping to turn into a habit. So, pick a time, a date and time when you want to do it, repeat at that time for a month, get rewarded every time you do it in this consistent, narrow window, and then let's see how consistent you are about doing this behavior thereafter. We had another group, though, that was not asked to be as constrained in the time frame when they engaged in this behavior, in this sort of habit startup phase. And what we found is that group actually did better. Looking at the two groups, they both, and we studied this with exercise just to make this a bit more concrete, two groups of people, both of whom actually exercise at the same frequency for a month, trying to build a habit. One group makes 85% of their gym visits in a consistent time window, say 7 a.m. The other group, only about half of their workouts are at a consistent time, whether it's 7 p.m. Everybody picks their own personalized time, but the consistency ended up being the enemy of habit. The group that was encouraged to be more variable in the way that they pursued this goal ended up doing it more in the long run. And I think the key explanation when we dug into the data for what was going on is basically the group that had been too routine, or very routine, I should say, became really rigid. So if they missed their optimal time for engaging in the behavior in this sort of post startup phase, when we're just watching them and seeing, how did this habit take? Did they hold on to it? If they missed their usual time, the one they got used to using for this behavior, they just don't go to the gym at all, right? If they become a 7 a.m. workout person, it's 7 a.m. or bust. Whereas the other group that had basically practiced variability in their habit ends up having a more robust change in behavior that lasts longer, because if they miss their first best time, they still have a fallback. They've gotten used to sometimes working out at 7 a.m., sometimes at 5 p.m., and life throws you curveballs. So that ability to be flexible turns out to be really important for durable behavior change, which I found surprising. I honestly went into this research thinking we should encourage routinization. That's really the key to habit formation. And by the way, 80% of the psychologists we surveyed when we got the results of the study expected that to be the winner. And so this was a surprising but I think important finding. And it makes a lot of sense if you think about it in the context of the way we, say, practice for sports, right? Like you would never practice always doing things under optimal conditions, right? I was a tennis player. You'd never sort of practice always hitting a forehand in exactly right position. You got to run around, hit it off balance, and that's how you get good. It's sort of the same for habits and behavior change. We've got to get flexible. We have to practice doing things in optimal and suboptimal conditions to build really robust behavior change.
Finally, Katie, we talked about fresh start earlier, and can I ask, does the pandemic count as a fresh start? Is this a good time to be thinking about new habits?
Yeah, well, I feel funny labeling it a fresh start because nothing about the pandemic feels fresh. It feels icky. But I do think, to put it mildly, I should use a stronger word, but I do think that the psychology of fresh starts applies, because the idea that we have demonstrated in study after study is that at moments that feel like break points in our lives, that feel like chapter breaks, we are more motivated to naturally undertake change, whether it's, changing our diet, changing by setting new goals, changing by going to the gym more regularly, changing in all sorts of ways. It feels more natural when we have a reason to step back, pause, reflect on the big picture goals we have in life, and when we feel more disconnected from the era behind us. And there's no question that the pandemic has led to a lot of us thinking, what is the meaning of all of this, and how do I want things to be different going forward? And that it felt like a major chapter and a major disruption in our lives. So I do think as we restart different parts of our routines in this sort of post-acute phase of the pandemic, hopefully if there's not a more acute phase.
Post-lockdown.
yeah, as we rejoin and re-begin things that we had set aside, I think there's a lot of fresh start opportunities that we can take advantage of.
Hey, it's great to chat to you. Thanks so much for the work you've done in this area, and thanks for the help you've given all of us today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on the show.
Alofalava, Yorana, Kamna Maori. Pacific news, current affairs, culture and music. You're listening to RNZ Pacific.